Great. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the season premiere of our town hall at Northern Virginia Family Practice. I'm Dr. Ken Zweig, and I have a fabulous panel of co-hosts and co-workers with us today. So glad that all of you could join. We are hoping that we're going to have an interesting topic today. But before I get started, I just want to remind everybody, if you haven't gotten them yet, flu and COVID shots are available, both at our office and really at probably any pharmacy that's near you. So if you please make sure that you get your flu and COVID shots. And if you get it outside of our office, please just drop us a line so that we can put it in your chart and keep track of everybody. But I want to make sure you all are up to date on those. So we're going to go ahead and start off tonight. First of all, I just wanted to introduce, as I said, my fabulous co-workers. Tonight we have our illustrious leader, Dr. Natasha Beauvais. And
That's
Dr.
you, Natasha.
Yeah.
Hi. Say hi, Natasha.
Hello. Say hello. You know, nobody's going to bite. Dr. Cecily Havert.
Hi,
And
everyone. Great to
from
see you this evening.
Dr. Christy Castillo. So,
good to see everyone.
thank you all for joining us. And so tonight is going to be, our topic is, docs who walk the walk. So talking about how we try to stay fit and healthy. But like all of you, we try to walk the walk, but sometimes we get tripped while we're walking and fall off and don't always do as well as we'd like, because we are only human. And so we wanted to give you guys a little peek under the hood of what it's like for us and how we manage to do or not do the things that we know we should. Often in our offices, we spend a significant portion of our day, as I'm sure you all are aware, telling you all to eat right, exercise, get enough sleep, limit your stress, take care of your mental health, and try to do the right thing so you can stay healthy. And often we get the question back, well, how do you stay healthy? And that's a fair question, because it's really hard to be honest, sincere, and authentic when we're giving advice if we're drinking and smoking and eating pizza till 2 a.m. It makes it a little hard for us to really give you the advice that works and be authentic with that. So we do try our best, and I think we do fairly well. But as I said, sometimes we do get tripped up. So with that, we wanted to get into tonight to give you an idea of how we do the things that we feel we should do. You may have heard of the 4 pillars of health, and those are pretty obvious. It's diet, exercise, sleep, and mental health. Probably not new for any of you. And if you are doing well in those 4 pillars, your health is probably very good. You feel well, you're doing well, but it's hard to get all of those 4 in line. And while all of us are very passionate about all 4 of those pillars and want you all to do well with it, we also amazingly each have a area of interest in one of those 4 pillars, and just coincidental that we happen to. It's not that we chose or talked to each other. Each of us just happen to have a passion in one of those pillars. And so we thought it'd be great for each of us to tell our own stories of why we have that passion, how we go about it, and what's important to us, and then hopefully important to you as well. And this is going to be an informal discussion. Hopefully it's going to be some talking amongst us and just an open forum. This is not a lecture, but just like I said, a peek under the hood. If you have any questions while we're going through this, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to get to those at the end. And any questions that we don't get to, if we run out of time, we'll hopefully create a blog on our website to answer them then as well. So we're going to try to get everything as we can. But again, thanks to everybody for joining us. And so we're going to start with Dr. Beauvais, and she is going to talk to us about exercise.
Oh, hi, everybody. It's great to be back here doing a town hall. We have taken a little hiatus. The chat is working. It was disabled at first, but it's now working. So please type in any comments or thoughts or questions that you just want to remember for the end, and we'll get to them at the end. But we'll definitely take a look at the chat and try to keep it interactive. So I'm Natasha Beauvais. I grew up a tall, clumsy kid who was and still is very uncoordinated with respect to hand-eye ball coordination. So all ball sports were off the table for me. I learned how to ride my bike and I could handle that. So I did a little biking when I was a teenager, and then I discovered rowing in high school. And I was on the crew team in college. I was captain of the crew team in college. I spent a lot of time and loved and loved and loved rowing. So I went from being a complete non-athlete, kind of awkward and uncoordinated, still awkward and uncoordinated, but had that athletic experience of like, what does it feel like to really feel tremendous strength and health in my body. And I remember walking down the streets in my college town one day, and I was probably a junior or a senior, so I was really, really fit. I had really learned how to lift weights and exercise and work out with the team all the time, and I just felt so strong. And I just thought, wow, like I've never felt this way before, but I feel so strong. And that is something that I can fondly look back on and kind of hope for again, but I'm not there anymore at the moment. As some of you know, I have 4 children. I had my fourth kid at 39. And after the fourth kid, I never really found that strength again. I kind of got back some modicum of it in between all the other ones. And then after the fourth one, I guess my mindset must have just changed because suddenly I wasn't doing all the things I had been doing before. And I found myself at 47 or 48, so about 10 years later, getting out of a car after a 12-hour drive one day, and I couldn't stand up anymore. And, my kids were making fun of me, and my husband was looking a little quizzically, and it was because my hip was really stuck. Like I just couldn't stand up straight. And, why was that? Bottom line was the reason is that I had been not working out. Like my butt had lost all of its strength and my hip kind of got all out of alignment. And I really couldn't walk. So I kind of, muddled through that and I got myself somewhat straightened out, just in terms of physically able to stand up. But we drove back the second half of that, the return trip of the 12-hour trip, and my husband said to me, Natasha, first of all, don't you want to go hiking with me when we are retired? Like, don't you want to still be able to move and like have a good time together? We're a very physically active family. And that's one thing, like he was very concerned about me. And the second thing was very lovingly, he said, Natasha, how can you be a doctor and never go to the gym? And you're telling people all day long to go to the gym and you're not going to the gym. And I will say, I took that to heart. He was absolutely right. And I went back to the gym, and in my late 40s, after previously being absolutely comfortable, working out, lifting weights and doing all of that stuff, I was totally shocked to feel completely uncomfortable. And I was actually quite lost. Like I walked in there and I thought, this is totally overwhelming. I do not feel like I could even start doing any of these activities or machines. And it was then that I kind of understood a little better what I experience with a lot of patients when I talk about exercising, and especially those who've never been used to exercising vigorously before. They sometimes look at me just the way that I looked at the gym that time. Like, this is bewildering. I don't belong, and I don't really know. I don't feel comfortable starting again because I couldn't do anything at the time. So, I'm a little older than 47 now, and I have kind of taken back a little bit of those capabilities. I work out. I have had a trainer through COVID to kind of help me get back to the basics. And I have ecstatically started rowing occasionally with a wonderful group in Alexandria, the Alexandria Rowing Club, which is available for all of you to join just down the road, right on the Potomac. And I really hope to make that more and more and more a part of my life. And then I'll show you, I'm in my room, I'm in my office right now, and right over here is my bike desk. And if Dr. Zweig were at his office, he would also have a bike desk, and we have one in our conference room. And I, I do spend a lot of time doing video visits with patients while I'm on my bike desk.
It's a fabulous
Gosh, I
way
love
to get a few steps in and a little exercise while doing your work. So
Yeah, yeah.
you got to sneak it in. And Natasha, I love what you said about kind of just getting back, and actually rowing and doing something recreational. I hate going to the gym. I hate it. It's boring to me. And so the hack that I did for exercise was like, well, what's fun? Like, so I love playing tennis. I love just being outdoors. So you don't necessarily have to go to the gym in order to be active and exercise. So I've kind of like hacked my way into exercise by going and playing tennis because it's something that I love. The other thing I love about tennis and some other sports, and I think Natasha, you can say the same thing about rowing, is that there's some, it's actually pretty social. And there's a
Yeah.
community there, and
Hmm.
you kind of got each other's back. You've got accountability partners. So what my recommendation would be, just find something that you love doing. If it's just, I mean, bowling, if it's just something, just get out there and find yourself a community.
darts, pool. I mean, it doesn't have to. You don't have to get a sweat going, as long as you're just not sitting in front of the TV and eating bonbons. Anything counts. It doesn't have to be exercise, the heart rate at 150. I mean, just it's really movement that makes you feel better and makes you live longer. I always tell patients our bodies are made to move. And yeah, it's the same way. Actually, I had an experience where I used to run because I thought it was so convenient. You could do it in 20 minutes and get it out of the way, but I hated it. But I do it because that was just I didn't have a lot of time to do other things. And then I ended up getting a foot problem and I couldn't run anymore. I thought, wow, what am I going to do? I love biking, but you need 2.5 hours, 3 hours to go biking. And I thought, well, no, actually, you don't. I can bike in 20 minutes too. It's just got to go faster. And so I started doing 20, 25-minute bike rides, and I was happy as could be and realized, hey, you can still get a good exercise in that amount of time and do something that you love. You just got to sort of figure it out and figure out what works for you. But yeah, it's very personal for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. For me, in this season of life, I have two little ones, and it's hard to find the time. Number one, I agree with Cecily. I absolutely hate the gym. For me, exercise nowadays looks like my commute. So my 20-minute walk in the mornings, 20-minute in the evenings, taking stairs where I can up and down Metro, just moving, like Dr. Zweig said, just moving. And before kiddos, it looked like a Zumba class or a Casa class, or I love dancing. And so that's fun for me. I can't tolerate machines. So I can't agree more. Look at what gives you joy. What seems even a little bit fun, and start there. Even if it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes that you didn't do before.
You're also doing baby curls every day, so that's exercise.
That's true. I forget about that.
Let's do strong biceps.
Yeah. So great, yeah. So these are just a few little hacks that can help. One thing I also just wanted to mention, one of the things that we're going to talk about, how do you really, all this comes down to behavior change. How do you get yourself to do the things that you already know that you should do, but don't know how to get yourself to do it. And one of the big pillars is just start small. You don't have to start at 100 miles an hour. The little baby steps. 5 minutes of exercise is still 5 minutes more than you were doing before if you weren't exercising. So everything counts, and starting small really helps. And also, most importantly, one thing that's really important is be kind to yourself. A really good thing to make something happen is to, when you do even 5 minutes, pat yourself on the back. We have a tendency to all say, God, I can't believe I only did 5 minutes. That's all I did. That's terrible. It's 5 minutes more than you did. Be kind to yourself. That's what gets you coming back. Right? You do the best you can. And that's all you can expect from yourself. So,
yeah, tame that inner critic.
Right. It's hard, but
we're all working on
him
also.
when we get to mental health, but
we're all working on that as well.
All right. Well, great. Thank you, Dr. Beauvais. All right. Next, we have Diet, brought to you by Dr. Castillo.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I am Christy Castillo. I am the physician at the DC office. Let's see, what would be helpful here for me? So I grew up in Puerto Rico, surrounded by a lot of delicious Latino food, which was heavy on rice and beans and a lot of pork and not a whole lot of fruits and veggies on my plate. That's just how culturally how we ate, and it's absolutely delicious. I grew up a chubby girl, is what I guess is how I have been described and would describe myself. And when I was around 15 years old, um, I started Weight Watchers with my family, with my mom and my sister. Um, Came from an absolutely good place, learned a ton from Weight Watchers. It actually, kind of looking back, was a pretty good start to changing how I ate and how I felt about food. But did that for a few years, lost the weight. The weight was the metric at that time at 15. I don't think it was much about how I felt because I was into looking good in my clothes and all those things. At the same time, I've always had this passion for being in the kitchen and cooking because to me it means family, it means gathering, it brings me joy to cook for others, right? That's my way of showing love. So I started to make, then eventually fast forward, I went to college, lived at home through college, lived at home through med school. Most of the cooking was done for me by my mom, but we had made some of those changes. And then I moved out on my own and struggled and did a lot of buying the pre-made frozen meals. And in all honesty, I just didn't feel great. And that could have been just the resident schedule and, 30-hour calls and add eating a bunch of stuff that is super processed, not a whole lot of whole foods. Probably wasn't exercising a lot. So my four pillars weren't quite there. But I decided I was going to start with one change, and that was going to be I was going to try to move, kind of change a little bit of how I ate. And so I started to introduce more, less frozen foods, do meal planning, like try to cook once a week. And I made that what felt like a really big change. But I started to do that for the week and I started to feel a little better. And then I started to experiment with other types of cooking. So I really got into kind of Indian recipes and Southeast Asia recipes and just cooking with more spices and different ingredients and a lot more whole foods. And I started to, not only was it joyful for me, but it also, I started to feel better just with that change. So I started to just make, one day a week, make food, meals for a few days, and I started to feel better. I think that was it felt like a really big change, but that was the only change I made at the time. And so stepping back, I think a lot of what helped me was it felt like it was a change that I could sustain. It didn't feel like I didn't make these changes all of a sudden. I started by saying, okay, I'm gonna cook one day a week and then save some for the rest of the day, of the week. It didn't feel, and I also didn't put the pressure, as I had before, to every single day have what felt like a perfect meal. I just made a little change, and hey, if one day I went to Chick-fil-A or 2 days or 3 days I went to Chick-fil-A, then that's fine. But I'm eating, some of my meals are better and I'm having fun while I'm making them. And I still, yeah, I found joy in doing that. So I think that ties together with the fitness piece. It also, I think, will tie in with the mental health piece. It's small changes are more likely to stick. Um, and if you find a little bit of joy in it, it's even that much more likely to stick and stay. Um, so that's my story here. I'm not a fan of, I don't think any of us is, of the word diet, follow this diet, do that diet. I think it's um, making modifications that are culturally appropriate, I think is also very important. So that feel like, you're not doing this crazy thing that you can't stick to. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what I can say for my journey and for what's worked for me. And then also there's been times when I eat really, what I would say is, we could say poorly, but where I've gone back because I've had a kid and I just have to survive, right? And that's okay. It's kind of righting those ways, right? And trying to come back to some sort of what feels like our balance and what feels good for our body.
What
So
does cooking feel like now with two babies? For me,
uh
that was
some
like,
days it feels like Yeah, like I still try because again, it brings me joy. It makes me feel like that's my way of showing my love to my family. That's me, right? So I still try to cook most days, like 4 or 5 days a week. I try to cook. There's days where I just want to throw the kids out and stay in the kitchen by myself and then tell my husband, hey, you take the kids. There's days where my oldest, where probably the days that I feel the most joy in the kitchen are the days when my oldest wants to join me. And she has a little plastic cutting board and plastic knives, and she's excited and she's part of it. And so it's a whole family thing when we're in the kitchen. Um, but it's not always like there's days where I just don't want to cook, and there's days when I'm super happy to be there. Um, yeah, most days I'm happy to bring something to the table for my family, even if it was a mess that day. So.
Anybody else with any thoughts to add on to that as far as little hacks or well,
I would just add that it's definitely a journey, and I think there are different times in life when we can handle different amounts of commitment in any of these directions. And so, like I'm remembering when I had two little babies at home, and I got so tired of rotisserie chicken and broccoli because that's basically all I could think of to cook. And that's not even
That's what I
cooking.
had this evening, actually. I stopped over at Safeway. I picked up a rotisserie chicken. Just as an example, I picked up some chicken, some mashed potatoes, and I threw some frozen vegetables into the microwave. But it actually turned out to be a pretty decent meal. I didn't mean to jump in there, Natasha, but it just made me like, oh my God, that's exactly what I made. Having a colorful plate, I think, is also something to kind of think about. I mean, something that looks really pretty. Some things that have not worked for me is when you deprive yourself of something, right? Because we all get on the kick. It's like, oh, I can't eat carbs. Okay, so no carbs, or I'm going to cut out sugar completely, or I'm going to do this. So when you deprive yourself of something, especially if it's something you really like, it's hard because you're going to be constantly thinking of it, and then the minute that you have it, then you feel like a failure. So then there's a piece of you that feels like, well, then just forget it if I can't do this. So I'll have to say I kind of like that's something to stay away from, at least for me. It hasn't
Mhm.
for me. The other thing I'll say about nutrition, and this is I really think that a lot of the future of medicine and health is going to be found in or just I think what am I trying to say? I think we are underestimating the power of nutrition in keeping us healthy. Actually, I really think that the quality of food, the types of foods that we're eating, the nutrients and everything, and the effects on um, just as how our body functions and our immune system and all of that. And I think that it's just the tip of the iceberg when we're talking about
Yeah,
nutrition.
yeah,
So I
for
just, yeah.
we were just
for
talking about
ourselves
my
and
wife last night
patients.
because 100 years ago, your own eating, what came from from the ground, and everything,
Yeah.
everything was organic, and everything was whole food, and then we went through this time where everything became more and more and more processed, and then to this ultra processed, and we're now starting to realize that's not so good, and move our way back, and you just you do your best. Nobody's going to be perfect. I love what you said about don't deprive yourself because that'll never work. But if you can, replace works. So, I tell my patients, if you have ice cream every night, saying, I'm not going to have ice cream, I'm not going to have ice cream, I'm not going to have ice cream, guess what? You're probably going to have ice cream. But if you say, I'm not going to have ice cream, I'm going to have, frozen sorbet that may be less calories and made from strawberries or something, or whatever, something else that frozen fruit or something that is similar, maybe not quite as good, but still satisfies you. That's a lot easier. It's much easier to replace than to deprive. So, and again, like you said, you do your best. You don't have to be perfect. Little changes. 100 calories a day is 37,000 calories a year. It's almost a month of food, so it makes a difference.
And a lot of what also I've been, referring patients to is dietitians. Dietitians can be really, really helpful in finding, I mean, whatever your goal is, whether it's weight loss or just feeling better about yourself, more energy, treatment of the weight gain associated with menopause, whatever, whatever's going on. I speak from experience there. But I mean, whatever issues are sort of coming up, I also want to plug that a lot of times a dietitian can be really, really helpful.
Really
So.
helpful. And everyone says, hey, well, I already know what I should eat. Well, a good dietitian is not somebody that says, eat celery and come back to me in 5 days. A good dietitian is somebody who is a behavior change specialist and tells you, how do you get yourself to do what you already know you should do?
Yeah, and Ken, I mean, and Cecily, when you started to say, I think our understanding of nutrition is not fully there, what I thought you were going to say is like, I think we're undervaluating the science of the neuropsychology of change with respect to also how we eat. And that loop that you were just discussing where any of us says we're going to adhere to a particular diet and therefore avoid X, insert what you want. It was fats in the 80s and 90s, and it was carbs, and it can be sugar, whatever it is that you're going to not do. It makes us want to protect ourselves from that feeling of being bad. Like we have this little neuropsychological loop that is natural to us to protect us from feelings that we're creating for ourselves by naming that as a bad thing. And if we actually can recognize that none of that is bad and we're not bad, then we can help ourselves get out of kind of a little bit of an unconscious punishment cycle that we don't even know we're putting ourselves through.
I also tell patients, I love, if you think about the evolution of all of this, we've only had supermarkets on every corner in the last 50 years, but we've been evolving for 10 million years or longer. And so, we're made to want to eat as much as we can, as many calories as we possibly can, and then to sit around and conserve it and not use it all up, because it used to be that food and calories were not in unbelievable abundance like they are now. And so, it's okay to want to eat a bowl of ice cream and to have a big meal, and there's a lot around this, or to not have the feeling like, oh, exercise seems like such a chore. It's hard. It's not, this is not something that marathon runners and other people are just natural at. It goes against how we're made. But if you can find it in yourself to do the right thing, you don't just live longer, you feel better day to day. And that's, I think, what's most important from doing these right things. So, great. All right. And then I am up next on the subject of sleep. And any of you who are patients of mine already know that I am quite passionate about sleep, and make sure that is something that we discuss at almost every visit, because I feel like it impacts everything that we do. When I was growing up, like any good teenager, I would sleep in, but I would take it to the next level a little bit, and sleeping till 1 or 2 o'clock was not uncommon at all, to the point where I garnered the nickname Prince Valium when I was a teenager. It is what it is. I love my.
You were taking Valium.
I was not taking Valium. It just this is the name that stuck. Like Prince Valium.
Please clarify that, Ken.
Not taking Valium. Nope. That just the name, it was a play on the Prince Valiant, and so that's how I got that nickname. Yeah, I don't know if you know that one, Prince Valiant. Yeah. So, and then in my 20s, I started to take on the thought that people say, "Hey, you can sleep when you're dead." And I thought, yes, that's right. Yes, I don't need sleep. I can force my way through this. And I then went to medical school and residency, and you pull all-nighters, and you wore it like a badge of honor. I can get through this. This is no problem. And when I was actually falling asleep, writing a note, in the hospital the day after an all-night call, I thought, okay, I can get through this. I'm strong and I can do this. Well, obviously that wasn't the right way to look at it, but we were young, and that's sort of the way things were looked at back then. You really just don't think as well. Well, flash forward, I started practicing. noticing that I was, starting out as a young doc, seeing a lot of high blood pressure, a lot of obesity, a lot of diabetes, depression, anxiety, and eagerly I'd want to read as much as I can on all these things, and was trying to devour as many articles as I could see. And time and time and time again, I started noticing that there was this article about sleep and hypertension, or sleep and diabetes, and sleep and obesity, and sleep and heart disease, sleep and depression. And it was the time when all these sleep labs were starting to show up, and sleep medicine started being a really popular specialty that people were doing, and it started getting more and more clarity. It's not something that we used to really talk about all that much. And the more I read about it, the more I realized, oh my God, this is not, I'm not necessarily treating high blood pressure and diabetes and obesity and depression. I'm treating sleep disorders, and start looking for it and asking people, yeah, they either work late night shifts, or they have insomnia, or they only sleep 5 or 6 hours a night, or they have sleep apnea. And it got to a point where I felt like I could walk into a room, look at the chart beforehand, and look at the patient and say, all right, I think I know how much sleep you're getting before I even asked. And it just became so ingrained and so important, and so realizing how much it had an impact on everything that we saw and everything that we did and everything, how we feel too, day to day, that it became a really important thing for me. And like I said, as I started asking patients about it, if you look for it, you find it, because it is incredibly, incredibly common. And it's something that you can do something about in most cases. And so I really enjoy it. I really think it's a fantastic place to focus. And I feel like, to me, it's the foundation of all of good health. Because if you don't sleep well, you don't have the energy to exercise. If you don't sleep well, you want to eat crappy food, and you don't get full as easily, and you don't think about making good choices. And if you don't sleep well, your mood is not as good. And so to me, good health really starts with sleep as a good foundation. And as I've gotten older, I also realize that, when on the nights that I don't get good sleep, I feel it more and more, and it really is impactful for me. So I do everything I can to make sure that I sleep a good 8 hours every night. I have my sound machine and my comfortable bed, and we have blackout shades, and the fan on, and the temperature just right, and make sure that I nest every night, and it works for me, and it really. I feel a lot better when I do sleep, and I really feel terrible when I don't. So, I think that's, for most people, the same.
Yeah, Christy, I want to hear what you have to say about it, having babies.
Right.
I don't know, and all of us have kids, right? And so there's always going to be times in your life when sleep is elusive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and so there is that piece. So, Christy, how are you? How is your sleep these days?
Sleep is interesting these days. I absolutely love sleep. I was very much like Ken, the teenager who could sleep till noon. Those days are gone. Yeah, sleep right
He'll
now.
come back. He'll come back.
Yeah, it's like so many things in life, managing the peaks and the valleys. But it's interesting now. There are nights where, I get a good 6 hours of sleep. And maybe I'm woken up once, and then there's nights where you're in bed at 11 o'clock, maybe. And then 15 minutes later, somebody wakes up crying. And when everybody gets sick, we've all been there, right? It's even more challenging. Like sick nights, I dread them, because more than anything, it's like the compounded fatigue, right? Night from night from night. And then there's nights where there's days where I can manage to take a nap in on the weekends. Like we give each other breaks, and that just feels amazing. Ken, I don't know how you feel about naps, but a good nap
Sure.
resets me.
Especially in your situation, absolutely. If you don't have a choice, then absolutely. I mean, ideally, you can get it all in one big chunk of 8 hours or so. But yeah, no, if you have crying kids at night, no, nap's fantastic. I'm a big fan. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I have my second one now, and I know that if it follows the same pattern, when the baby is past the 1 year mark, it's going to get better again. And so but I do notice a difference, like those nights where maybe collectively I've slept 4 or 5 hours. am not as sharp. I am on edge a little more. I'm not the nicest person to like people at home. And yeah, so you see the difference. You can feel the importance of sleep. Absolutely.
But you don't always recognize it. A lot of people who are chronically sleep deprived just feel like that is the norm. And I always tell my patients, we all have different thresholds for pain. There are people who can break a leg in like the Navy SEALs and keep running a marathon. And some people have a hangnail and they can curl up into a little ball. But we also have the same different thresholds for sleepiness. And so, some people don't feel as sleepy even though they are sleep deprived, and they can misconstrue the signals, and with diabetes and obesity and high blood pressure, and they say, oh, I'm depressed, or oh, I'm always hungry, or oh, I'm not motivated to exercise. And really, those are all, a lot of times those are misconstrued signals of you're sleepy, you just need to go to bed. And so it can be tricky sometimes.
And we're not, I think, in our society, there's being change, but for example, as a resident, 10 years ago, I bet it was even more pronounced before you all. I mean, it isn't really encouraged
In the old
to
days.
take care of yourself in that way, right? And sleep. And here you are in the ICU on 30-hour call, right? And so we're not, I mean, it happens to, but not in the same way, but of course, attorneys. And I mean, there's all these professions where if you were to say, no, I need to get some rest, you're frowned upon, right? It's a sign of weakness. And so I think it's as culturally, we shift that, and we as a whole start realizing how important that is. Same goes for nutrition, same goes for activity. We'll be in better set up to make those changes too.
Yeah, I think we're all working to kind of allow ourselves to unlearn some of what we learned in residency, like that we should be powering through anything, that's actually not healthy for human beings in general, and learning to be really sensitive to what we need as individuals, whether it's time to ourselves or time away from the office or time with family or exercise or better food. I think we don't learn the best habits when we go through training as physicians. And Ken, I'm interested in your perspective on maybe your own or maybe all your patients, but I find that as I age, it is not as easy for me to sleep as long. And I wish that I could sleep 7 hours every day, but quite often I'll wake up after 5. And I feel like I have to like turn something off in my mind to allow myself to get back into that kind of meditative, relaxed mindset instead of kind of waking up and then just moving about my day, because I feel like it could be learnable, and sometimes I can succeed at that and sometimes I can't. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I do, and actually, that's a wonderful segue for our town hall for next month. Actually,
Do tell. Give us a preview.
uh, please tune in for that one. We're going to have a Dr. Maglio, I believe her name is.
Demi Maglio.
Maglio, yeah. So, and she is a cognitive behavioral therapist for insomnia, who's going to be talking about ways that we can teach ourselves to sleep better. And yeah, as we get older, it's this cruel trick of nature where it gets harder to sleep. But there's a misperception out there that people who are older need less sleep. They don't. We need the same or even more sometimes as we get older. It's just harder to come by. And so you have to learn little tricks to get the sleep that we really need, and you can learn them. It is, when you're in your 20s and you need your sleep, you can curl up on a hard desk and into a ball and probably sleep for 7 hours and feel good. But yeah, as you get older, it does get trickier, and so you just have to learn little tricks to get yourself to sleep or back to sleep. And so she's going to give us hopefully a lot of good tips that we can use for that.
I'm coming to the next town hall as an attendee.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just gonna put in a plug for for all of the perimenopausal women and menopausal women out there with hot flashes. I mean, lack of sleep is something that really is hugely impacts this time of life, just with the hot flashes and just the the difficult sleep. So anyway, it's challenging. It is something you have to work on constantly. So.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of things out there that really make a difference. So, all right. And with that as a segue, now we're going to move on to last and certainly not least, Dr. Havert, who is going to grace us with her knowledge on mental health and how that impacts us all.
Well, that's that's a big big topic.
Well,
I mean, just sort of taking a look at it, it's like, well, what improves our mental health? And I think that, just looking back at the three other pillars that we've talked about. So, exercise is really important for keeping, for good mental health. It gives us energy. It makes us feel better about ourselves. Nutrition, giving ourselves good fuel. It gives us energy and wanting to kind of move forward and engage with our day. So that improves our mental health. And I think Ken was saying with the sleep, I mean, getting good sleep, that actually when we sleep, the different stages of sleep, there's REM sleep, and then there's also there's deep sleep, but REM sleep is actually helping with the mental rejuvenation. And so if you don't get REM sleep, which actually happens at the later part of the night, you're not going to get that mental wellness and that comes with sleep. So anyway, just wanted to kind of give that little segue. But so I'll just start by saying I recently went through a fellowship program. It's a contemplative medicine program through the New York Zen Center. And through that we really looked, at supporting both the mental health of our patients as well as the mental health of ourselves through the use of compassion. And, I was really drawn to it just from, some of the facets that they use. And a lot of it is, resting on concepts of mindfulness and meditation. My first journey into this, when I first became introduced to it, was back in 2002. This was it was 2005. It wasn't 2002, it was 2005. And this is when my husband and I had a preterm fetal demise. And so we lost a baby as our firstborn infant. And it was devastating, as one can, imagine. And just the loss and the grief and the suffering that goes along with that. Really, we're sort of looking at what can we do to support ourselves. And so we ended up, actually, interestingly enough, the Smithsonian was having a class on Buddhism and meditation. And so we said, well, why don't we go give this a try? And it was really just an amazing class, and just opened our minds to what can be helpful in these moments. And a lot of it, honestly, is, for me, what I found was mindfulness and meditation. And I know, we always say, oh, go meditate, that what's important. Meditation is really important. Some people roll their eyes and say, "Oh, I'm so bad at meditating." Like, right? I'm so bad. This is because my brain just goes a mile a minute because I'm so bad. Meditation doesn't work for me. And I'm like, well, actually, you're more than halfway there, because you're noticing that your mind is going a mile a minute, right? And so much of kind of bringing our mental health, that kind of that grounding, which is what I really found to be so important. In establishing these healthy habits, these healthy techniques. And it's extraordinarily helpful. And it is something that I try to also talk to patients about myself. One other thing, I think, what was it? I think I wrote it down. Naomi Judd said, "Your body hears everything your mind says." So, which is, I think, something that's really interesting. And then, and also the other thing I wanted to talk about is just sort of noticing that when our mental health is suffering, when we are not, in a place where we feel good about ourselves, we feel good about our situation, it's really interesting because our body will respond to that. And a lot of times we see physical symptoms start to arise: headaches, abdominal pain, just pain in general. Our pain receptors tend to get more activated, and so there really is a correlation between how we feel mentally and what's sort of going on upstairs and how our body responds to it. And so that's something that that over the years, bringing awareness to my own experience with that, it's also been something to bring to awareness of patients that I treat. I think what's great, what's happening is that we're actually recognizing the impact that stress has on our total health, and whether it's our mental health or just our physical health. And I think we're talking about it more. I have more patients coming to me and saying, well, do you think that all these headaches I'm having is due to stress? So yes. I mean, I think it's great because now there's the stigma of the impact that our mental health has on our physical health, and seeking help for that is breaking down a little bit. So I'll stop there if anyone else wants to pop in to talk about anything that they do to, support themselves or support family members.
I think for me, I was going to say I had forgotten. I don't know that I ever really realized the power of it, but breath.
Mm-hmm.
When it feels like I can't do anything else and I'm in the middle of the biggest tantrum, or a stressful phone call, something that feels highly stressful, just a call from somebody that I know will be a high stress call, coming back to my breath, like something as simple as a few deep belly breaths. It's amazing what that can do. And it just takes that moment of, okay, awareness. I can feel my heart. Like, it's kind of like how I'm trying to explain it to my kid right now. I'm like, I see that your muscles are tight. There's a great book about it. And I see that your face is clenching up. You must be angry. You must be stressed. Or, and so it's recognizing those. It happens for recognizing that, and then trying to go to my breath. I can always go back to my breath in a moment of high stress. So that's something that's worked for me these days, when access to things like a therapist, and I'm like, you can always argue that there's time for that, but sometimes it feels like there isn't, but I can always go back to my breath.
I feel like that's,
Christy, I'm breathing better just listening to you.
yeah. I
It's
feel like
powerful.
that's a great, that's just a great example of mindfulness, which I used to think was this, just generic term that got thrown around all the time, and I never really knew what it meant. And I thought, certain mindfulness, whatever, And I had this, aha moment one time. It's a long story, but how I just, I was like, oh. That's what they mean. And you realize that breathing is mindfulness. Being aware of what you're eating, being mindful about what you're eating makes you eat better. Being in the moment when you're sleeping, there's a lot of breathing techniques, or just clenching your muscles, or just listening to sounds in the room. They're all of these, are things where mindfulness really helps bring you back and sort of can help with your mental health, your eating, your sleep, and just every part of you. If and may, like I said, may sound trite, but if you can find a way that works for you to be in the moment, it can really help pull all of these aspects of all these pillars together.
Well, I think that we spend so much of our life either living in the past, reliving things that we might have done, or did we do that right? Or, did I make that person mad? Did I, or worried about what's happening in the future, right? And if you think about, I mean, just notice this. If you're one of those people who can't sleep at night because your mind just races, right? Okay, so just notice what exactly is going on. Are you, so much of it, you're probably thinking what the day was like, or what's going to happen tomorrow. But when you're sort of in that moment and just sort of focus in, and those other parts can just go away, can just die away. And just, sorry, my dog is sneezing over here. I don't know if you're hearing extra noises, but yeah, just being in that moment can sometimes just help. And it's the grounding and all of the, the anxiety and everything that kind of goes with living in those other times, which are not happening now, falls away a little bit. So
think something that I've learned later in my life that's related to that, Cecily being in the moment, and also Christy with the breathing, is actually we can learn physical techniques that can change our physiology to help us be in the moment. And like I've just been sitting here breathing deeply since Christy spoke. And so it's reminding me that deep breathing is really stimulating our vagal nerve. And our vagal nerve is the moderator between what state we're in. We can be in a fight or flight state. We can be in a freezing state. We can be in a state of like contemplative digestion and peacefulness. And we can use physical tactics to help pull our bodies into a different frame of mind. And Cecily, you mentioned meditation, and I went to a very powerful seminar at the Fairfax County Public Schools. It was run by the Sky Meditation Programs. It was after several children had committed suicide in the Fairfax County system, including in my child's school. And they took us through a process where we did a type of breathing where that all of us could access like immediately within 20 minutes. I couldn't believe how physiologically changed all of this big large group of parents in the room was. And many things were powerful about it, but partly everyone was in a state of distress when we came in. And it was a large group, so it wasn't like it had to be some kind of private, tiny one-on-one learning. Like there were a couple hundred people there, and we were all learning something together. And it was immediate. Like it was, profoundly changing. It felt, we felt, each of us felt, wow, that did something powerfully different in that, intentional exercise. And so learning that we can change our psychology by doing these things that are physical that help guide our nervous system into a different place has been surprising.
Yeah, I think it's fabulous, and it's a different way of getting there for everybody, but there is probably something that works for everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'll also just add that personally, I've had therapy in my 20s, and I've currently been in therapy for the last 3 years. And it is right now I'm doing something called trauma-informed therapy, and it is teaching me about the like neuropsychology of compassion for ourselves and understanding what we really need in a way that I hadn't learned as a doctor in medical school. And I even a doctor who just graduated 3 years ago also didn't learn that in medical school. So it's not just that I'm 30 years out of training, but it's really, really, first of all, personally healing. I'm very grateful for it. I mean, it's changing me as an individual. It's really changing my ability to parent in a different way. I feel like I'm very able to be differently present to people in my professional settings. And I'm really grateful for that work. And I would encourage those of you who wonder about doing that, to really recognize that it can be life-changing in a very positive and freeing way. Um, as Christy said, there's always a time for that. Sometimes there is not the right time in anybody's life, but I was able to make it work, and it's been really, really helpful. And the more of us that do that, the more that change can cascade for other people. So I recognize myself so differently in the exam room with patients. I'm capable of something different than I was capable of 3 years ago because I've learned something powerful for myself and kind of put it to use personally. And it's not taught in medical school. And so I hope there's a way for us to take it as a course and maybe not have to all go through one-on-one therapy to get it. But that's been really very life-giving for me. So I did want to share it because I think it's of value to anybody who's considering it.
Yeah, I think the theme that resonated, Natasha, was compassion. Compassion
Mhm.
for yourself, You know, and that when you have compassion for yourself, it's just natural for that to come out on others. And I think that, you know, just looking at these four pillars, I mean, so much of it is just really having compassion for yourself, for treating yourself right, to know that you deserve to treat yourself well. You deserve to sleep. You deserve to exercise. You deserve to eat well. You deserve, you know, you deserve to have mental wellness and peace with yourself. And so, and all of that is just going to elevate your physical health. And so I tell patients, it's like, it's really hard to fix your diabetes and, you know, and you know, treat your hypertension and, you know, and then deal with your chronic abdominal pain if we don't look at these these pieces that are just holding up everything. So anyway.
There's an interesting conundrum here, sort of, because we're talking about how it's so great and helpful for you to be mindful and live in the moment. On the other side, the place where we all probably fall off the wagon is for that instant gratification, and that's different than living in the moment. You know, being in the moment is being aware of what's going on around you, but not, you know, trying to feed or suppress whatever bad feelings or something with food or alcohol or you know, sitting and watching TV. You know, it's important to be mindful in the moment, yet also have some future thinking and realize that, hey, it's going to be hard for me to exercise now, but if I do, I'll feel better later or tomorrow. I don't want to go to bed now. I'd rather watch this show, but if I do, I'll feel better tomorrow. And so it's being in the moment, but also realizing that the delayed gratification is really important too.
I just realized it's almost 8 o'clock. I don't know yes, I don't know if people have any questions that they want to throw in the chat. I mean, they can be about anything, you know, personal questions, ask us. What was that?
Yeah, personal or
personal questions, questions about it, like nutrition, anything like that. Happy to answer anything, but
well,
yeah, I guess we covered everything.
Yes, we answered all the questions, easy as pie. So now everybody who's on this, all 34, we have your names. We are going to make sure that you guys are all eating well, exercising, watching your diet, and sleeping. The rest of our patients are on their own. But, so, well, great. This is a great discussion. Thank you so much for all of you to be here, both to our panelists and to all of our patients who tuned in. Please remember, we will be posting this. This has been recorded, so we'll be posting this on our website. So if you or somebody you know wants to watch it, they certainly can. And we'll be having another one next month. We're going to try to keep these going monthly so that you can tune in and hopefully learn a little something. Thank you all, and hope you all have a great night.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.